Right, that's it. We're live. So, hello everybody, and thanks for joining us again today. So today I'm going to Canada. So I've been to America and Scotland, and we're in Canada today, talking to Hannah Peters about horse agility. So, hi Hannah, thank you for joining us.
Hey, thank you.
So, could you start off by just telling us a bit about yourself? No, a bit about horse agility first, if you don't mind, and how you got started with it, how you got involved.
So I started with horses. I didn't come from a horse family. I started riding horses very young. I was lucky, probably around 4 or 5. And I didn't really do any sort of groundwork or anything for the first 10 years of my riding. And so when I was around probably 13, I started kind of thinking it just wasn't really for me. So I started looking, and I had an opportunity to go play with a miniature horse and at a barn that was about an hour away from where I lived. And so when I went into this barn, they had used natural horsemanship, and so it was there that I was introduced to natural horsemanship and groundwork and agility. And so agility itself, I do it through the International Horse Agility Club, which is based in the UK, and it's founded by Vanessa B.
Mm-hmm.
And so that club, you can do it all from home. You just every month they release a pattern. You can set up the pattern in your own arena or out in the pasture, wherever you have. And you do everything on your own. You can practice it, you can film, and then you submit it to the club. And so there's lots of different levels. You can start at the beginning and work your way through. You can move up in levels based on your points. It's really great. You can't use sticks or whips. And anytime your rope, if you're online, if your rope comes taut, you lose points. If you're at liberty, if you touch your horse through your neck rope, you lose points. So it's really interesting because it really helps both the person and the horse to think and really have to work together. It's not as much of a direction as it is a partnership, which is very fun when you get it.
What I found interesting about it is when you introduce obstacles, you suddenly realise how accurate you've got to be, or how accurate you weren't until you had to do something around an obstacle.
Yeah. Well, just recently I've been playing, one of the new things we've been doing is having my horse back around me. So that's really fun because I have to really pay attention to where his feet are, because I'm only so small and I stand there and he is not quite so small. So every couple steps I get the stomach into my side and I have to kind of really think where his feet are, and he has to really recognize where I am. And that's been very cool to see how agility's helped us with things like that.
Brilliant. So could you tell us a bit more about your achievements in horse agility then?
Yeah, so I want to say I started with horse agility when I was probably 12 or 13. And I had worked with a couple different horses and competed with a couple different horses before I got my own horse. And we had competed together for a while and ended up winning both, for both online and Liberty divisions. We won the Youth World Championship in 2015. So I'd say that's definitely my biggest accomplishment with horse agility. It was really a nice thing for me to kind of realize what we were capable of.
Mm-hmm.
And it's definitely a nice reminder to look back on, kind of see, wow, that's something that we did, because it wasn't something I thought I could do. And another thing that the Horse Agility Club does is they have good horsemanship awards that they put out every once in a while. And I've gotten 2 of those with Elliot, and that was very awesome, because that's the goal, is to do what's right for my horse, and to have that recognized is definitely an achievement for me.
Brilliant. So can you give us an idea of the obstacles and what you kind of got to do at that level then?
So there's some common basic obstacles. So there's curtains that your horse has to trot through. They have to be able to stop and wait for direction. They can't be stepping, moving. Another big one is they have S bends or L bends, where you have the pole shaped and have to back or go through the pole corridor. That's a real fun one at Liberty because you really have to watch the feet and be able to yield the hind and front end. And especially if you have a horse like my gelding, he wants to step on everything and anything. Anything that's going to make a clunk when he hits it, he wants to hit it, especially when we have the camera on. So it's definitely a lot of fun. And there's jumps. Mostly when there's a jump, you can choose the height because not every horse can jump. There's also walk only classes with International Horse Agility, which is great because you have retired horses where you have humans that can't be running around, and they really have something for everybody.
Mm-hmm. Super. So we've covered some of the benefits of horse agility, I think, there, but can you tell us a bit more about the benefits and possibly how that would relate to other disciplines?
Yeah, so I'm a huge believer that it's great for everything. I try to be as well-rounded with my horse as possible. And so having horse agility has really helped that. You can really see they really need to think. And a horse needs to think. There are so many horses that never need to use their own brains when they're out. And so just seeing a horse being able to turn on the dime in agility, that's going to help them in show jumping. It's going to help them in reining. They're going to be very versatile. They can go out on the trail. They can switch terrains. They can go through water. It's just for most horses, it's a huge confidence builder for them to be able to think things through. And so if you have your horse and say you need to load them into the trailer and they've never loaded before, but they know that they can step up onto something or they can go through under a tarp, that's all going to be games that are going to help them be more confident for anything you want to do with them.
Mm-hmm. Fantastic. So tell us what your training routine looks like then, because I do a bit of horse agility myself with my little pony. And I've been sort of working my way through the instructor levels, but getting to the point where you can do it all at Liberty and stuff, I just aspire to be able to do that. So tell me what your training routine.
So my average session would be, especially in the winter, my first probably 10 minutes at least is just letting Elliot come into the arena. Let him roll, let him check anything out on his own if there's anything new in there. I find that's really good for his confidence, for him to be able to make his own decisions for the first little bit, especially getting in off the hard ground outside. He can come in, he can go for a run, he can let out some bucks, whatever he wants to do. And then after that, once he's kind of settled and I find he's kind of looking to me, I will start to play at Liberty at first, just kind of see where we're at. Definitely a bit of a warm-up, just kind of doing things that we've done from our previous session, just letting him kind of come to me and kind of seeing where we're at for the day. And then I will either continue at Liberty or I'll put him online and do more advanced things or introduce new things. Mm-hmm. And definitely probably with him, he is a ridden horse, but I want to say probably 85% of our work is on the ground. I really believe that anything you can do on the ground is going to make so much easier in the saddle. And so we do play at Liberty quite a bit, but I really try not to be afraid of putting him online, because everything comes from online. I feel like that's something that people get stuck with is you're trying for Liberty, you're trying to do agility at Liberty or just anything at Liberty, and people forget that the line isn't your enemy in working at Liberty. You need to be able to go back online because that's where the learning happens a lot of the time. And so if you just keep not quite getting it at Liberty, it's not going to go anywhere until you go back online. So we definitely play a lot, both online and at Liberty.
Okay, cool. A random question that isn't on the list that
yeah, of course.
I want to ask. One thing that I find really sort of holds me back, it sort of prevents me from progressing, is getting all the kit out. Like there's so much, when I think, oh, I've got to put the whole course out to do the competition, and then I've got to find somebody to video it, and then I fall out with my husband because he gets narky because I go, can I do it once more, please? And he's like, what do I've got to get back to work. Do you have any tips around that?
I am very lucky to be, like I said, Elliot's at a barn where everybody kind of does the same thing as me. I'm very privileged to be in a spot where everybody's in the same mindset. But as far as practicing goes, don't be afraid to break it down. If you can't get everything out, work on one thing at a time. Okay. And then when you can finally get the whole course out, the whole pattern out, everything's going to be that much easier. Okay. If you can do everything on its own, then putting it together is not going to be a big deal. Right. And I definitely say if you can practice on your own, then you get somebody else to film and you don't have to say, oh, okay, now this obstacle we need to redo because just this obstacle, which there's still going to be things like that when you film. It's going to be everything's perfect except for that one thing that you thought was going to be fine. Yeah. But definitely, I would say do as much as you can individually, and then putting everything together is just going to go that much smoother.
Cool. Right. So, what is the most important thing that you've learned through your journey with horses and/or agility training?
Definitely just what horses are capable of. I'm doing things now and I'm seeing things being done that I didn't think was possible before I started learning natural horsemanship and agility. So definitely, and even if there's people who do, I did see people do Liberty or do all these fun things, they were always people who had the opportunity to travel and go and learn from all sorts of different trainers, or they were able to send their horses away, or they could go and they could take lessons every single day. And most people in the horse world cannot do that. And so for me, just learning through agility, the big thing was I can do this at home. I can do this just at my own barn. I don't need to go everywhere. I can really just take the time. And if you want to do it right, you can do it without money, without going everywhere. Even if that would be a dream to do, it's not necessary. You just need to have the motivation and want to do what's right for your horse.
Fantastic. That's that's really a really good point. Thank you. And what's the best compliment you've ever received?
That was a hard one. I saw that question, and the thing that kept coming into my mind was just recently, somebody commented on one of my videos and just said, I think what they said was, you should get an award for having such a healthy looking horse. I was trying to think of other things, but that one kept coming into my mind. And I think just something like that, it's not about agility, it's not about accomplishments, but I think that will always stick with me because that's the real goal for me. I want Elliot to be happy and healthy, and for that compliment, I think I'll remember that for sure.
I think it's nice when people can give you compliments on social media and things, because it's scary sort of putting yourself out there and posting videos on social media, because everybody's an expert at home and they can all have an opinion, can't they? And it's frightening. What are people going to say? So that was really nice that that was positive. That was lovely. So what frustrates you when you're training, and how do you deal with that?
For me, a big frustrating thing is I tend to arrive with a set plan. And yes, it's good to have plans, but it's always frustrating when I come in with a plan and sometimes there's nothing I can do, nothing me or Elliot can do to make that work for us this particular day. And that can be really frustrating for me, especially if it's something that we already know and we just can't get it for some reason. So what really works for me is just to remember that it's really just about working with myself to just be ready for whatever horse shows up that day. Yes, I always work with my horse, but he's not going to be the same every day. And I have off days. There's days when I don't want to do things. There's going to be days where he's not going to want to do things. And sometimes you just need to step back and just have some undemanding time with your horse and just kind of readjust. and you can change your goal for the day as necessary, because that's something I do is I pick a goal and I get so frustrated and stubborn about it that it's like, this is what we're doing today, and it doesn't work out for anybody. So really just being able to take a step back and realize what type of day we're having, and we can pick things to work from there.
Yeah, I know that feeling. I like to write in a journal and say how I've done today and what I'm going to do tomorrow, and I come out with a plan as well.
Yeah, horses don't really follow plans as well as we do.
They don't write in the same journal, or certainly read what we've written. Right, so what I liked about watching your videos is that your horses seem to have really relaxed ears, and I see a lot of horses, particularly the ones that are working at Liberty, that have their ears flat back. I just wondered if you could tell me your thoughts about that.
Yeah, so the point of Liberty really is freedom. So when everybody says they want to learn Liberty, they want to learn to be free with their horse. They want their horse to want to be with them. But I feel like in that, people tend to get caught up in it and they nag their horse a lot. They'll ask their horse for something, and then they'll ask their horse for the something, and they don't accept the tries a lot of times, I see. And that's a habit I get into. It's a bad habit that everybody has. And what you really have to do is just let your horse know that they're doing well. Because it's the same thing if I go to you and I say, hey, Louise, take a step to the left. This is what my coach always told me. It's just take a step to the left, and you take a step to the left. And I say, take a step to the left, and you take a step to the left. And I say, take a step. Eventually you're going to say, what's the point of this? I've taken 7 steps to the left. I haven't gotten anywhere but further to the left.
Yeah.
So you have to think, really, if a horse is out in the field with another horse, the dominant horse will ask the other horse to move. It'll start out with just a look. And then if the other horse doesn't move, it'll turn into maybe ears back, nose out, and the pressure will increase. And then you'll see the submissive horse move off, and the dominant horse will release all pressure. So if you treat your horse the way they treat each other, it's going to be a lot easier for them to understand. And if you give them that break of pressure, it becomes more of a partnership than it is a dictatorship. And that's the goal for me, at least. And so there's a lot of horses I find in Liberty that you can tell they feel trapped, even if they're at Liberty. There's no ropes, there's no restraints, but they're prey animals, and they're looking for that release of pressure. And sometimes it doesn't come, and that's not going to make a happy horse. They'll be a compliant horse, but it's not going to be a happy horse. And so you really just need to be able to see that in their body language and see what is like relaxed. If maybe they're pinning their ears because they're just being a little bit dominant and they just want to get some opinions out, and that's fine too. But you really need to know if it's comfort related or not, and that's just knowing your horse.
Yeah, lovely. So do you have any practical tips or advice for people just starting out then? So especially at the minute, so we're as I said, back in lockdown here in the UK, so everything's shut, nobody's competing, no horses are moving, there's no clinics or lessons or anything like that. So if they just go out to the barn today and they fancy having a go, where should they start?
Thinking about this, it tries to be the same thing that I try to do, is just not to have any expectations. It's the same thing if you go in with a set plan, sometimes you're just gonna be disappointed. And so just start out, just don't have any set plan, go in and just really learn to appreciate the process. Don't get caught up on, hey, I want to have my horse side pass to me at Liberty. Or don't walk in and say, I need my horse to back through the L bend, but go in and say, we're going to play with this. We're going to work on our backup. We're going to work on our sideways. And just don't make a big deal out of it, because as soon as it becomes a big deal, it's going to be frustrating for both of you. So if you just go and you have fun with the process instead of the end goal, it'll definitely help with both your confidence and your horse's confidence, and everything's going to be so much easier in the end.
So if somebody's literally never started and never done any of this, they've never done any side pass or anything like that from the ground, what would be the most basic things that they could start off with? The most basic, maybe obstacle or exercise or?
I'd say, as far as obstacles go, try to work with a narrow gap. Put barrels up about a horse length away from the wall, or 2 barrels separate from each other if you don't have an arena, because that's not natural for horses to go through that space, especially for an unconfident horse. It's not going to be natural for them. And if you start it with it wide and really work up the confidence and play with that, play around it, walk through, have them halt in front. If they don't want to go through, bring them up, let them walk away, really, and remember to take breaks from it. Don't keep pushing them through. If they go through nicely, walk away, do something else. Mm-hmm. That's a big thing when you're starting. You don't want to keep pressing and asking, because horses don't learn like that. They need time to think about what they just learned. And as far as liberty and other things for agility, definitely work on being able to yield your hind end and your front end from the ground, because that comes up in everything you do. And it's easy to forget to do that from the ground, especially as a rider. And so definitely just ask for one step, and every once in a while you can get one step with the hind end, and then eventually the front end will stay still and you can move the hind end, and just keep baby steps, and just little things like that will help with everything else.
Lovely. I think when people watch all the fancy stuff, you kind of think, oh, it's all really fancy, but actually it's the basics, getting the basic ingredients right, isn't it?
Exactly.
That are important. Lovely. So who has been your biggest role models and why?
I'd have to say my biggest role model by far in and out of the barn would be my barn owner, Beth Smith. She does really amazing things. I've never been more impressed by somebody and their horse. Not only, like, she invited me into her barn family about almost 10 years ago, and I was like a 12-year-old kid. I didn't know much. I rode horses, but I didn't know much about playing with them. She introduced me to everything, horse agility, natural horsemanship. She films all my patterns. She makes sure things are set up for me. I'm so lucky to have met her and her horses. They've changed everything I believe about horses and horse sport. Truly everything, the way I think today is 100% influenced by Beth. And I'm so thankful for that, because I would not be here today without her. So additional talking about Beth, but
is she watching this, getting all
maybe? We're talking about it this morning, so.
Oh, lovely. So are there any resources that have helped you along the way? So I'm a bit of a geek, so I like books and DVDs and online resources and stuff.
I definitely think you can learn something from everyone. So I'd say you can have your favorites, but don't stop yourself for looking elsewhere. Personally, the original set of Pirelli DVDs really helped me. If you go back to like the original content from the program, I find that's really the best to work on from home. They set things up very well. It's easy to get lost in things like that, but if you start from the beginning, it's very, very helpful for me. As well as horse agility, Vanessa has a horse agility handbook through the club, and it goes and it breaks down every obstacle. She updates it every year with new obstacles. It gives you the basics, it gives you the rules. It's really nice resource to go back and see. If you're having trouble with something someday, you can go back, you can find out the exact setup, you can find out how. I really, really appreciate that. That's a really nice resource. And also for me, I really like Facebook groups and pages on social media and things where I can kind of immerse myself in like-minded people. And that helps because I can share things and I can hear back from people, and But the thing is with that, you have to remember, again, everybody thinks they're an expert sometimes. Or you have to really stay, well, this is my morals. This is how I want to go about it. And yes, I'm looking for help, but you have to really keep in mind that you really need to pick what feels right for you and your horse. And you're not going to find help everywhere you look that way, but every once in a while you get some really great advice.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point, actually, because there's such a spectrum. I was reflecting on this earlier, from people that almost completely free shape their horses, so they wait until they perform a certain behaviour and then reinforce it, right up to the other end of the spectrum where people are quite sort of coercive, and then there's everything in between. And like you say, it has to be right for you and your horse, and it has to be what feels right. And I think there's quite a lot of people that are judgmental, and it's about just feeling comfortable yourself and accepting what other people are doing as well.
Yeah, it's definitely know what you want to do. So for me, I want to be as natural as possible for my horse. And I know that for me, but I can still look at somebody who is not quite as natural and pick things up where I can be, oh, I really like that, but I'm going to do it this way. Or I'm really impressed by what you do, but I think I'm going to go and try to get it at it from a different direction. And I think that's really important, where you can learn from everybody, but you don't have to agree with everybody.
Yeah,
and that's something that you really have to kind of be confident in yourself and in your horse and what's right for you.
I think there's a real purity and wisdom in youth. I was saying this to my husband when I said I was getting you on for a chat. It sort of took me back to when I was younger, and just being open-minded and wanting to digest everything, but without that feeling that you have when you're 41, where you think, oh, I'm a bit old and past it. You know, when you're your age, you think the world's my oyster. I can do it. I can do whatever I want to do. And I think that brings this real purity and wisdom with it, and it's really refreshing. So always, remember that. So that, I suppose, brings me nicely to my next question. How do you believe in yourself and your horses?
That's a hard one for me sometimes, but I really like to have pictures and videos, and I find where I don't really get discouraged with Elliot, but I'm always discouraged with myself. And that's the big thing for me. I don't think I've ever looked at my horse and said, you shouldn't be where you're at, but I'll look at myself and say, we should be a bit further ahead. So having videos really helps me, because if I'm feeling a little down, I can look back at things that are different parts, different things in my training that I thought, wow, that made me feel really good. That made me feel a bit better than I feel most of the time. And so having videos, and especially where I have an Instagram account where I post a lot of things that started out with just somewhere for me to dump videos so I could have them and not keep space on my phone. And somebody told me, hey, you should make that a public account. You should share those things. And so I did. And having that is really nice for me to go back and see, hey, this is what I did this day. This is how I felt about it. This is how other people reacted to it, which isn't something I should focus on a whole lot, but I do sometimes. And so not only is our videos just such a great training tool to be able to look back, but I really do think it's a good motivator to be able to see where you were and where you're going.
How far you've come. Yeah, brilliant. So what are your goals then for 2021?
Oh, goodness. I'd really just like to make more time with the barn, which I know I'm a student. I have a job elsewhere, like besides school and besides the barn. So just to make more time to go out, and even if it's just undemanding time, just sitting, just doing anything can help. And when I finish my degree, this is a bit longer term, but definitely be working for it this year. I'm looking to get my certification with animal assisted therapy. And so the goal eventually is to use horses and hopefully horse agility in a program to help with anger management, empathy, problem solving. That's the big goal for me right now, is just because horse agility has helped me so much with so many things. And I'd like to combine horses and my psychology degree and really kind of make that something that's accessible for a lot more people. And yeah, so it's a bit of a longer term goal, but definitely this year is going to be a lot of building blocks for that, for sure.
That's fascinating. That's something that I've looked at and always been really interested in as well. And I don't really know much about it because there are a few places like that in the UK, but I think it's more popular in America and Canada, isn't it?
I believe so, yes. It's definitely, there's a lot of programs here for especially physical disabilities or physical issues. There's not quite so much on the psychology side, but I believe it's starting to become a bigger thing for sure.
Oh, well, we wish you the best of luck, and I'd love to chat to you more about that as well. It's something that fascinates me. So yeah, best of luck with that. And thank you so much for joining us and and it was really refreshing. And yeah, it was lovely to chat, and hopefully we'll speak to you again soon.
Thank you.
Okay, bye.
Bye.